So I want you to do me a favor. I want you to listen to this dialogue that I'm about to share with you. And I want you to think in your mind, what do these two speakers look like?
I can see this hurts, but I had to tell you sooner.
Forget it. I trusted you.
But if you look at it...
You never listen. You don't listen. You're never here when I need you.
Okay. Got it in your head? Are they tall? Are they short? Are they old? Are they young? Obviously, one's male, one's female, but what do they look like? I think you'll be surprised, as we'll find out as we have a frank conversation about artificial intelligence voices on this episode of the VO Heroes podcast. My buddy, Dr. Robert Pondillo, the reason I have any success in my life whatsoever. How are you, sir?
Very well, David. Not true, but thank you.
No, it is. It is absolutely true. And, you know, for people who haven't heard this story, Bob's the reason I was in radio. I got into radio. I fell in love with radio to begin with. And then he was selfless in terms of helping me succeed early in my career. We worked together many times over the years, not only on radio, but also in films. Bob's a writer. Bob is a filmmaker. Bob is a funny comedian. He's a podcaster. And, germane to our discussion today, he is a currently retired, but former professor of mass communications at Middle Tennessee State University in the borough of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and has taught and been engaged in our business from many, many angles. He's written books on what do you call it when you
censorship?
Censorship. Thank you so much. See,
That's
he
right.
even knows words. He knows words. And the words I want to talk about today, in the opening of the podcast, I asked people to tell me what they thought the people that were speaking looked like. And I did that on purpose because usually people go, yeah, young guy, maybe 30, military type, the girls, brunette or blonde or redhead or whatever they have in their head, whatever they see in their head. And it would be really, really interesting to some people who listened to that conversation and knew that these voices looked like this. Yes, a blade server. These voices, these are not your grandfather's artificial intelligence voices. These voices were created from digital models of real human beings' voices, but they don't sound like Siri. They don't sound like Alexa. They sound like emotional, varied, and directed talent doing that. Dialogue was from a video game, but we see this happening all over the place. And just recently, another incident occurred that brought this all to the fore. And when I got to talking with Bob about it on the phone, because we call each other a lot, and we stay in touch, which I heartily recommend. If you have a lifetime friend, stay in touch with them, because you want to have that connection. But we were talking about this documentary that just came out over the past weekend. I believe it's called Roadrunner. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, Roadrunner. Mm-hmm.
And it's about Anthony Bourdain,
right,
and his life. You haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it yet.
Although I've tried, it's in the theaters, and it's. I think this is a part of the promotion effort, putting it in theaters first. It's going to eventually be on Netflix, but to get a little jazz, a little buzz going, right. They put it up on. They put it in AMC and other theaters around the country. So yeah, it's out there now, but I haven't seen it yet, and I'm interested in seeing it.
Yeah, the director of the documentary is the same guy that directed the documentary about the
Mr.
PBS.
Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, yeah.
Iggy Pop, Keith Richards. He's done a lot of big and quite successful films.
Yeah. And I believe the documentary is called Won't You Be My Neighbor?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I worked in Pittsburgh for a while. I knew the story, but I didn't know the whole story. Mm-hmm. And it was done in 2017 and 18, released in 2019, that particular documentary. So I don't think he used any AI voices in that, but he did use AI voices in the Anthony Bourdain documentary that just came out. What he did was he took Anthony Bourdain's dialogue that he had recorded or had acquired in the footage that he used in the documentary, and he went to a lab and fed it into an artificial intelligence deep learning set of software, and then said, okay, have Anthony say these words. They're words that he wrote, but they're not words that he could find Anthony Bourdain actually speaking. And I think he was not ready for the firestorm that this has created, because what it brought to the fore is a lot of different issues. And in the limited amount of time that I have with you, I want to discuss as many as we can. The first of which is using an artificial intelligence voice and not saying so, and then doubling down in the interviews over the weekend going, you know what, we can have a moral conversation about this later, but I'm here to promote the documentary, right? That's kind of the attitude that it felt like when he was saying these things. Documentary filmmaking has an inherent mission to be truthful. Yes, to tell stories, but to be truthful. So you raised your eyebrows. Tell me what you meant by that little raise of the eyebrows.
Well, when we walk into a theater and sit down, we are watching a digital stream or a film projected onto, in a darkened room, projected onto a screen 40 feet tall, and we're eating popcorn or whatever we're doing. And to make a movie work, any kind of movie, we have to suspend our disbelief. We can't say, I'm sitting in a room, in a darkened room, and we have to go, I want this movie to entertain me. I want this movie to talk to me and speak to me in some way. So
even documentaries.
Even documentaries, when you look at how film is constructed, you got to look at, a documentary filmmaker like a Morgan Neville, who's the guy we're talking about. He sits down, like you said, he looks at tens of thousands of feet of film. Tons of images and music and you name it. He looks at everything and he says, how can I tell a story? Now, the name of the movie is Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain, not the film that is the most complete and true caricature or whatever of Anthony Bourdain, but a film about Anthony Bourdain. So this is his take. He's the director. He's deciding what you're going to see and how you're going to see it. He takes all this information and he starts grouping it in a way to make a beginning, a middle, and an end, rising action, falling action, all the things that compel you to watch a movie, right? And sounds and everything else. And many of the critics are saying this is a brilliant piece of work. They're saying it's a documentary that you won't soon forget. I mean, some of the people on Esquire and Vanity Fair and all the higher, all the those who are considered true film critics are saying good things about this.
Yeah.
So all these things, as a person that makes film and as a person that works in audio, that there's something called a timeline on an edit machine, and
right.
you take bits over here and bits over there, and you put it there, then you put bits here, and then you do this and you do that, and you craft a sound, or you craft a series of images that turn into a scene. But does that mean that we're watching the scene for real? I mean, remember when back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, when motion pictures first began, they thought, well, we'll just put a camera in the audience and film it. And
like a stage show.
Yeah. Would that be considered a movie then? Well, we wouldn't consider that a movie today because innovations have occurred. Those innovations contain close-ups, wide shots, dream sequences, all sorts of new ideas that were used to enhance the entertainment process, and the telling of the story.
Sure.
So I look at this thing, this AI thing, and I think, well, is this just another thing, another tool in the director's toolbox that is going to be now used because it's probably cheap? You could argue that as you said, Bourdain said these words or wrote these words, but never actually spoke them. Can you argue that, well, this is an accurate representation? And I would say across the board, no. But it is going to be a compelling way to make a Hollywood movie. And
I think, to be fair, it is the truth about what he was thinking. Certainly he wrote it down. But is it true that he said those things in a way that they could be captured and used as voiceover in a film? The answer is no. But you're saying, it sounds like you're saying, it's okay. That's fair game in terms of telling the story because film is artifice to begin with.
Well, in a way, I'm saying that, yes. But we were going to talk about ethics today, and ethics is a tool that helps us.
I want to talk about that. Yeah.
Right. That helps us make decisions. It's a branch of philosophy that helps us, that asks the question, what should we do? How shall we live? Right. So this means there's certain, I could think certain things, you could think certain things, but then there's a community of people, that have to decide if this is a good or bad thing. Like being, is hurting women, raping women. Is that a good or bad thing? Well, I don't know if outside of Bill Cosby, I don't know who would say, well, yeah, it's a pretty good thing.
Well, the ethics questions that are raised here are manifold, and they are in particular very, very frightening to actors, to voice talent. He may be dealing with the ethical issue of whether or not generating out of whole cloth sounds that never actually occurred really in nature. That's one ethical question, and it's more of a question of storytelling. And I don't really have much of a problem with that. But what it did do is cast a spotlight on the ability to do that, and the ability to take a normal human voice, a voice that we all know and all recognize if we've seen any of his travel shows or his cooking shows, or we've seen him in interviews, or we've heard the stories about him not being a very nice guy from time to time. He speaks and we know his voice. And what I saw happen over the weekend was an explosion of conversation on social media, on my telephone, from people saying, wait a minute, hold on. I thought AI voices was coming in the 25th century. I didn't think it. And I think it's time now to have a conversation about the fact that technology, as usual, is neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. It can be harmful. It can be beneficial. And it will affect the status quo. And I think that as voice talent, we need to know that coming down the pike, there will be both above board actors and not so above board actors that will use this technology instead of using human voices. There are people who are coaches for the most part. I coach voiceover just for pure transparency, who are saying, nah, don't worry about it. They'll never be good enough to, to take your job. Well, that dialogue that I played at the beginning, they've already taken your job. Yeah. And in the area of voiceover that I've made the most money in, IVR, they long ago took over your job. There's an already traveled path, and we're about to see that road widen, get asphalt put on top of it, get lanes put on it. And the question is, do we have a future as human storytellers, or will everything be relegated at some point in time to artificial intelligence? What's your thoughts?
Well, if we're looking at this in an ethical way, a communal ethical way, we have to employ certain thinking behaviors like inductive reasoning, not necessarily by that I mean experiential stuff that, ideological stuff that's in the air that we don't see or feel, stuff that is just around us and it just is. That's the way things are. That's the great power of ideology. It's like fish in water. They can't see the water. We can't see the ideology. And so we think we use our inductive reasoning to think about something called axiology, which is a big word for what's valuable. So values, principles, beliefs, norms, these are the things that help us understand ethics and make a good choice. Because the ancients used to think that if we can just make a good choice, we could change the world. Mm-hmm. Maybe nudge it just a little bit. Now, it's a very sweet thing to think, but they weren't living in a world of 7 billion people either. But anyway, so we've got this thing, and we've got this new tool that these producers are going to use. And will they use it is the question. Should they use it? I guess we can do it, but should we? And that is a difficult question. One we can answer. You and I can answer, because we have certain beliefs and notions about how important it is for the art and the craft and this and that. But what is their value? What values are they using to determine this? And their value is the Hollywood value of show business. It's the business part. It's the let's do this because we can, and it's going to save us money. And we live in a capitalist culture. There's an ideology that surrounds us. So that means
it's good enough, right? It doesn't have to be, it's good enough for government work. It's good enough to pass.
Yeah, it's good enough. In fact, it's getting better and better and better all the time. Yeah. The problem is, just like everything else, is usually producers who don't have a sense of craft, art, skill, anything except the bottom line, think that's what people will want, and that's what people love, and that's what people will keep buying. And a certain percentage of the audience certainly will do that, because they can't hear it and see it and what have you either. You know what this is akin to, David? I was thinking about this before we started. It's like, who in the world would ever spend $1, $2, $3, $5 on a bottle of water? Mm-hmm. Who would? I mean, it's water's right over there. I can get it's for free. Well, free, you know what I mean? And yet, look what happened. We've got bottles of water, huge industry, billions and billions of dollars industry now, and yet we still have tap water, and we still go there and drink it. And so somehow, in some way, these two things live synchronously. They live concurrently. And you think, well, that doesn't make any sense. I think this is what's going to happen here. I think, yes, they will use it, but there's a certain wall I think AI is going to eventually hit. They'll be able to do it great. They'll be able to make it speak in like a person from Great Britain. It'll sound like a person from England, and they can, right? Yeah. So all sorts of cool things they'll be able to do, but nobody, with the exception of Morgan Freeman, Morgan Freeman will be Morgan Freeman all the time. And the next Morgan Freeman will eventually cut through, and he or she will be a standard, So I think there's going to be some kind of concurrent thing that will happen in this in this situation. There'll be, you just got to have new people. You've got to have new, exciting new people that burst upon the scene that will be compelling for audiences to want to see and hear. Yeah, that's what I think.
There's a lot of different angles to this, and I've given it a lot of thought, because it's not something that's like all of a sudden a big surprise. It's been coming for years and years and years. When I worked in IVR and was doing live prompts on phone systems, there was very crude, not even artificial intelligence voices, just digital voices. The artificial intelligence layer came in when somebody said, "Oh, if we keep feeding real voices into this data machine, we can make it better and better and better, bits and bits at a time, using artificial intelligence." And the thought that I've been giving, and I want to kind of lay this out for you, and I want to get your thoughts on it. The thought that I have is that we have layers of expertise and effectiveness in everything that we do. Some people are really good at something, some people are just serviceable at something, and some people just really can't do those very same things that other people are expert at.
Right.
And I think that there's going to end up being the notion of AI voices and bespoke voices or human voices or natural voices or some word that means,
Right.
We got a person to do this.
Right.
And I think where we are is we're just prior to where car manufacturers were in the early 1900s. We're where the buggy whip people were. I don't think we're going to be out of business. I think people are going to still ride horses to a degree, but I don't think it's going to be as clear as to what is human and what is artificial intelligence. I think that most people, because they don't buy based on quality, Napster showed us that. Napster music was hardly high fidelity. It wasn't like you were sitting in the middle of the sweet spot of a surround sound system listening to, rap music when Napster let you download anything. It was kind of crappy in terms of its engineering, but it didn't matter because people don't buy based on high quality. They just don't. They listen to AM radio for the message. They listen for the information. They listen for the sporting event or the conservative talk show host or whatever. It doesn't matter that it doesn't sound as good as FM radio. And I think if anything, yes, we should be aware of what's going on in that space as voice talent. I'm talking specifically as voice talent. What conclusion can a voice talent make about what's coming down the pike, and not in the 25th century, but in the next 5 years? And that is, if you want to continue as a voice talent in this business and compete effectively with what will be better and cheaper and easier to use tools that can create a sound similar and competitive to a human being. And if you don't think that's true, if you just got your head in the sand and you don't think that's true, rewind this podcast and listen to that clip I played. Yeah. And that's just one example. You need to make sure you're on top of your game. You need to make sure that you are someone that a producer would go, no, we need to get so-and-so to do. We need to get Bob Pondillo to do that voice because he's really good. I don't want to use the AI voices. I want to use Bob. I want him in the studio. Get him in the studio. I think that people really need to double down on raising their skill level, both as a performer and as a show business person, and realize that the best people will, rise to the top and be hired. But I also think we can't deny that this is coming. We can't try to legislate it away. We can't try to regulate it with union rules away. We can have rules about, disclosure, which I think is one of the other mistakes that Morgan made, is he didn't tell anybody. It just got found out, and this is what happened. So what are your thoughts on all that? Well,
let me take the last part first then. This notion that this controversy has just burst upon the scene is very interesting, especially when it comes 2 days before the movie is released. Know what I mean? Something's up.
I do.
Something's up. I think this is a marketing opportunity, and they saw it as a way to create a little controversy, and maybe people will come out to see it, because of that. Also, it affects a very small group of people, the voiceover group out there. I mean, there's a lot of folks involved, but I mean, in terms of a large audience, what's the problem, right? I'm sure that'll be the thing. But this is where ethics comes back in, David. I think we have to think about community. The community has to be involved in this. The community of voice talent, which, like you said, maybe you can't legislate it, but maybe the unions do have to get involved in this, because there has to be.
Well, they already are. Just to be fair, they already are. I'm on the voiceover committee. I'm on the audiobook steering committee. We're already talking about it. We're already negotiating with producers on the use of it and the disclosure of it, and also the ways that voice talent can be compensated as a model for artificial intelligence voices. And there are some voice talent who go, no, I'm not doing that. No, they can use my voice forever. Well, if they could use your voice forever, but pay you forever, whenever it's used, well, maybe that changes the calculus of your rejection of it.
Maybe it does. And that goes back to the values question, the question of axiology, most valuable. And in a culture that celebrates money like ours, of course, if that compensation could be had, if that could be made, well, then, now you're talking. Now I'm interested in the value that this thing could give me, if any. But again, the question of not disclosing the fact that, in fact, why don't they could have very easily put up a graphic that said, much of this, or in fact, don't they do that? They say characters in this movie have been collapsed for the telling of the story or something.
Sure.
Sure. Sometimes that comes up.
It's not required, but sometimes they do.
But I think we're moving into an area that tells us, for those who care, this might be a significant thing to do.
Sure.
That's what I was thinking about. So, I think the community in general has to be interested in this, because we're talking about what's true. But it's a movie, and then you think, well, what does that even mean, what's true? It's possible that a film could be completely false, but full of truisms, Yeah,
and certainly in the documentary space, there have been plenty of examples of that. Misinformation and politicized issues.
Sure.
So it's not like, it's not like documentaries are the be all end all encyclopedia of what is true.
Right. It's it's like you say, it's a documentary, and so be it. So, but still, it's an entertainment, and it is it has to be by the community that it's going to harm. It has to be looked at by representatives of that community, and that's why legislation or your union or what have you should take a look at it and decide what's going to be valuable for its members. It just seems to make sense.
If you were to give advice to a voice talent on how to look at new technology, especially technology that threatens to a degree their livelihood, you and I have come through relatively the same time. Not you were a little ahead of me, but we've come through great changes in recording technology, recording mediums, the locations of where things have been recorded. I mean, we went from reel to reel to digital audio workstations to, on computer apps that do that for us. The microphones, you only go to a studio to record. Now, we kind of record at home, and it's good enough, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Everything has changed over time, and we've created ways to adapt. If you were to talk to a voice talent who's sitting there right now going, why am I even in this business? They're just going to take all the jobs from me. It's going to be like Automation, that song by the guy that did Hello Mudda Hello Fada, Alan Sherman. Yeah. He did a parody of the song Fascination. And it was automation, I'm told. That's why I got fired and I'm out in the cold. And, it applies today. And by the way, if I have to pay rights for that, let me know. But what would you say to a talent who is, understandably scared?
Well, don't be scared. That doesn't help, does it? I think the thing to remember is that you are unique. You are you. There are a lot of people doing what you're doing, but there's only one David Lawrence. There's only one way he can be. And his what makes him compelling is because it's him. So that's what, the fundamental thing applies as time goes by, and time will go by, but we're always going to be in need of those who can speak in a certain way and behave in a certain way and be exemplars of our culture. And you can be that exemplar because it's you, because it's your voice and it's your image and it's your attitude and it's you, and it's the uniqueness, I think. And that's another thing that Hollywood is always looking for. What's the new thing? Who's the next? So I think you've got to remember that. And sometimes it's hard because, your mind plays tricks on you and you think, well, who the hell am I? I'm nobody. Well, cut that out. You're very much somebody, and you're very much, now, are you going to be recognized for that ability? Well, that's something we all face. Who knows? Yeah. But it's a exciting world to be in, and an exciting business. So why not give it a try?
Yeah, and as we wrap up here, I think that there's one other thing that is kind of you can't beat, you can't fight against it, and that is if you have a storyteller inside you, you kind of can't push it away. I mean, you can deny it for a period of time. But if you really want to tell stories, either as a writer or as a director or as a filmmaker or as a mass communications professor or as a voice talent, you really can't deny that. And you should embrace it. And you should, there's competition all over the place if you want to look at it that way. There's other voice talent, there's celebrities, there's people who are coming up after you have that are moving faster in their journey than you are. And there's artificial intelligence. But if you have it inside you, my advice is don't deny it and make sure that you groom it, that you grow it, that you burnish it and polish it and become expert at it so that you can, do what you want to do, what you're made to do.
Yeah. What people are buying, they're certainly not buying the microphone. They're not buying the technology. You know what I mean?
By the way, I got to tell you, that is a really great instance of putting your mic sock on properly. That's just beautiful. It's gorgeous.
David Lawrence taught me that, by the way. He sent me that. This is my birthday present from David Lawrence. Thanks. That's right. $4.95 well spent, Dave. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Anyway, so they're not buying this stuff. They're buying you, or the conception of you, or the talent that you bring, and the skill and the craft and all that. And that's truly the only thing you have, and that is everything.
Yeah. So really great. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today. If you who are watching this have, thoughts, questions, answers, attitude, be kind, be gentle, be respectful, but leave your comments below this video and let us know what you think, what your fears are, what your conclusions are, what your questions are. And closed circuit to my VO Heroes pros, if you go to the Pro Connect private mastermind group on voheroes.com, you'll find a couple of postings where I've put up questions, just like I asked at the beginning of this episode. And that is, listen to this audiobook segment and tell me what these people look like. And I can now reveal that those two are artificial intelligence voices from a company called Deep Zen in the UK. And they have gone into emotions and changes and arcs and even little tiny fluffs. The imperfections are what make us human. And there's just so much to talk about here. I really appreciate your time, Dr. Robert Pondillo, my friend for life. I love you, man. I so appreciate everything that you have done throughout my life for me and for all of the students that you've taught over the years. And I really appreciate your wisdom on things like this.
Well, thanks, man. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.